Welcome back to another project. In this project, we are going to create a heart trail animation. As you can see from the final version of the project, when we move our mouse inside the browser, we create hearts with different colors and different sizes. In this project, we are going to use keyframes to create an animation that has a hue effect and also changes in the opacity and size of the hearts. We are also going to use JavaScript to detect the position of the mouse inside the browser, both the X and Y positions. Then we are going to use this position to place each heart at the exact position of the mouse. So in the next section, we're going to start with the HTML part of this project. So see you in the next section. All right, welcome back. Let's start our project. First, we open Visual Studio Code. Here we close the Get Started tab. Then in the File menu, we click on Open Folder. I would like to create the project on my desktop, but you can create it anywhere you like on your computer. So here we click on Desktop, and we click on the New Folder button to create a new folder. We name the folder Hearts Trail Animation, which is the name of our project, to create the real animation. We press Enter and then click on Select Folder to choose the folder. We close the Get Started tab again, and here on the left we right-click and choose New File. We name the file index.html and press Enter. Now we have our index.html file on the right side, but it's still completely empty. We can use an exclamation mark to create an HTML5 boilerplate. So we type an exclamation mark, and here we click on the first auto suggestion. We can use Alt-Z to turn on word wrap so we can see all the code clearly. Now we have the HTML5 boilerplate, which has the doc type that tells the browser which version of HTML the page is written in. In our case, as we are using HTML5, we just need to have HTML here. Then we have an HTML tag, which contains the head tag and the body tag. The lang attribute inside the opening HTML tag sets the language of the page. In our case, we set the language to be English by just writing N here. Then we have the head tag. The head tag has metadata tags and also the title tag. The charset attribute inside the first meta tag defines the HTML character encoding, and UTF-8 is recommended by HTML5 for web developers because it contains nearly all characters and symbols. Then we have the compatibility meta tag, which tells the Internet Explorer browser to use the most recent rendering engine, which is Edge. Next, we have the viewport meta tag, which tells the browser how to resize the page. Inside the viewport meta tag, we have the content attribute, which tells the browser to set the width of the page to the device's screen. For example, a mobile screen will be smaller than a computer screen. Then we have the initial zoom level of the browser, which is set to 100% by default. Next, we have the title tag, which sets the title of the page. We can open a browser inside Visual Studio Code using the Live Preview extension. We just need to right-click here and choose Live Preview, Show Preview. Now we can see the browser on the right side, which is completely empty but shows the title document. Let's close the Explorer section by dragging this line to the left. So we have more space on the right side. And now let's change the title to the name of our project, which is Part Trail Animation. Now we can see the heart rate animation title on the browser tab. And then inside the body tag, we just have a span, and we're going to add a background image to this span using CSS. That's it for the HTML part of our project. In the next section, we're going to use CSS to style the page and add the heart image to the background of this span. And we're going to style it using CSS. So, see you in the next section. All right, in the last section, we finished the HTML part of our project. In this section, we're going to start styling our project using CSS. First, we need to create a CSS file. Here we can use Ctrl-Shift-E to open the Explorer section And in the Explorer section, we right-click and click on New File. We name the file style.css and press Enter. Now we have our CSS file here, which is empty, but we can't use it yet because we must add a link to this CSS file within the HTML code. So we go back to the index.html file, and just after the title tag, we add a link tag. We just write link and click on the third auto suggestion, the one with the CSS. Now we have a link tag that connects the HTML file with the external style sheet, which is style.css. The href attribute defines the destination of the link, and since both files, index.html and style.css, are located in the same directory, we just need to use style.css for the URL. Now we can use CSS in our project. So we just save the file using Ctrl+S, and we close the Explorer section to have more space on the right side. And the only thing we need to do now is add a background image to this span tag and style it. So we go to style.css. And first, we start with the body section and remove the default margin of our project. So we'll start by just removing the margin. This way, we can easily style the components inside the body section. Next, we set the height of the body to be 100% of the viewport height, which means 100% of the screen size. Then we change the background color to black. So now we have a completely black website with nothing inside. But next, we're going to add a background image to this span tag inside the body section so we can display an image. So inside the span, we add a background. We use the background property to add a background image. For the image or the icon, we want to use a heart icon. To get an icon to use in our browser, we can use a website called Icon Finder. So we go to the desktop and click on Google Chrome, and here in the search bar, we search for Icon Finder. In the search results, we can see a website with the URL iconfinder.com. We click on this website and then close this. Here inside the search tab, we search for heart. In the search results, we get many heart icons in different shapes, but some of them are free and some of them are paid. Inside this tab, we can choose the free ones. That way we can see all the free icons. The icon I would like to choose is this one. We just need to click on it. Here on the image, we right-click and select Copy Image Address. Then we go back to Visual Studio Code, add the URL function, and inside the double quotes, we paste the link. We still can't see the image because the span tag doesn't have any width or height yet. So we set the width to 100 pixels and the height to 100 pixels as well. Then we position it in the middle so we can clearly see the icon. So we position it as absolute first so we can see it here a little bit. And in order to place this image exactly in that spot within the 100 by 100 pixel area, we can use the background size property to increase the size of the image as much as possible to fill the container. Now we can see it properly. All right, now let's bring this heart to the center just for our styling. So we just set left to 50%. And we set top to 50%. This actually brings the edge of the icon to the center from the top and the left. To bring the exact middle of the image to the center, we use the transform property with the translate function and set both x and y to -50%. Now we have the heart exactly in the middle of our website. That's it for the CSS part of our project. In the next section, we're going to use JavaScript to first detect the movement of the mouse inside the browser. And we'll get the position of the mouse, its x and y coordinates. We're also going to create this heart in different sizes and colors as we move the mouse around different areas of the browser. So, see you in the next section for the JavaScript part of our project. All right, in the last section, we finished styling our project using CSS. In this section, we're going to start adding functionality to our project using JavaScript. First, we need to create a JavaScript file. So here we click and use Ctrl-Shift-E to open the Explorer section. In the Explorer section on the left side, we right-click and select New File. Now we create a new JavaScript file, name it index.js, and press Enter. And before using JavaScript in our project, just like we did with the CSS file, we need to link the JavaScript file inside the HTML code. So we go back to index.html, and right at the end of the body section, we add a script tag. We just type SC and then choose the second auto-suggestion, the one that includes the src attribute. The src attribute is similar to the href attribute here and defines the destination of, and as both files are located in the same directory, we just need to write index.js for the URL. Now we can use JavaScript in our project. Okay, so we close this Explorer section and go to index.js. The first thing we need to bring into JavaScript is the body element. Since the body element is just a tag, with no class and no ID, we can use the query selector method to select this element in JavaScript. So we write const to create a constant, name the constant body element, target document, and use the query selector method to return the body. And as it doesn't have any class or ID, we just select it directly by its tag name. We just need to write body here. We can use Alt-Z to turn on word wrap so we can see the code completely. This lets us see the whole line in 1 or 2 lines on the screen. So now we can add an add event listener method to this body element and attach an event handler to detect the mouse moving inside the browser. Here we just write body element.addEventListener. The addEventListener method takes the event type as its first parameter, which is the event that will trigger a function. The event we're going to use is mouse move, which means when the mouse moves, we're going to trigger a function. So let's test it. We'll just use console log. For example, we can just log moved or mouse move, whatever you like. We open the console section here. That's by clicking on Open Dev Tools pane. As you can see, we can clear the console by using this icon. Then, when we go to the browser and move the mouse over the icon, we can see the effects. We see the mouse move event firing many times because each pixel of movement triggers the function once. So this is working. Now we just need to get the X and Y positions of the mouse as we move it. We can get that by receiving the event object here. And if we console log event.offsetX and open the console, then move the mouse, we can see the position of the mouse on the X offset. So when we move the mouse toward the top left, we see smaller numbers, and when we move it to the right, we see larger numbers. We can also get the Y-axis in the same way. At the top, we get lower numbers, and at the bottom, we get higher numbers. So we're getting both numbers, the X offset and the Y offset. So we store them inside constants by saying X position equals event.offsetX. Then we copy this line and change it to use Y. Next, we want to create a span like this. So we already have a span here in the body, but we're going to create exactly the same kind of span using the createElement method. Now we write a constant and call it spanElement. This is a new one we're creating specifically for our spans. So we say that each time the mouse moves here, we should create a new span, and we call .createElement. The element we want to create is a span. Right now we still can't see it because we have to append this span inside the body section, which is here. So for the body element, we call appendChild, and the child we want to append is this span element. Now when we open this in the browser, we can see the span inside the body section. We open this in a browser, and then we open the DevTools using Ctrl+Shift+C. As you can see, now we're getting a lot of span elements inside the body. As we move the mouse, we're creating a new span inside the body each time, all right? But we also want to position this span correctly. So we go back to Visual Studio Code. Before appending, we position this span using the X and Y values for the left and top. So we say span.style.left because we're styling it just like we did in the solid CSS. where we set the left and top positions. And we want it to be the left X position. Because this X position is just a number, we need to add PX at the end. Now we can see it appear on the left as we move our mouse there. But let's also add the top position. We copy this line and change left to top, and instead of using X, we use Y. Now we can see the heart being created and following the mouse as we move. The reason you're seeing a double heart is because we need to add something called pointer events. We'll change pointer events to none to fix this. Now we're only creating the heart exactly at the mouse position. However, this is actually creating an infinite number of hearts as we move. We want to remove each heart after a few seconds. We also want to add an animation that moves the heart upward and changes its color. So we go back to solid CSS and add an animation to the span. To create an animation, we need to use a keyframes rule. We'll name this animation animate. With keyframes, you can define different positions. We'll start by defining 0%. We set transform, translate X to minus 50%, just like we did for the top, so that on both sides we keep everything centered instead of starting at 0%. And set the opacity to be 100% as well, which means we have no transparency. Then we're going to copy this. And instead of 0, we set it to 100%. And instead of having 50% for the top, we just use a big number, for example, 5,000, to move this heart outside the top of the browser, and we also change the opacity to 0. That way it becomes invisible over time. Next, we add this animation to the span using the animation property. And the animation we want to use is called animate, which we already created here. For the animation duration, we choose 6 seconds with a linear timing function. As you can see now, the heart is going up, but after a while, you see too many hearts on the screen, and it gets a little bit messy. So to fix that, we can remove each heart after a few seconds. We just use the set timeout method in JavaScript at the end to remove the span. So we simply call set timeout. The set timeout method sets a timer and triggers a function after the timer expires. We can set the timer value here. We just say, for example, 3 seconds. And after 3 seconds, we want to remove the span element. So we create it here, but after 3 seconds, we remove it. This way, it's not going to get messy like that. We also want to create different sizes for the heart instead of just having one size. That way, the effect is going to look a little bit more beautiful. So to change the size of each heart, we can create a random number here. For example, we create a constant and just call it size. And we use the math.random function to create a random number. Then we use this random number to change the width and height of the span. We set the height and width to be 100% and in pixels at the beginning, but we can randomly change them here. So we just say span element.style because we want to style it. And here we change the width to be this size. This random number is between 0 and 1, so it's very small. But we want it to be between 0 and 100. So we can multiply it by 100 here. So this size is going to be between 0 and 100, and we just say something like that size plus px. So we change the width, and we can change the height as well by just copying the upper code and changing width to height. Now we are creating different sizes of the heart. We can get rid of the middle heart that we created by removing this span. So now you're just creating the heart by moving the mouse. Another cool thing we can do is change the color of the heart by using a function called hueRotate inside the filter property. So we just need to go to the CSS inside the animation. First, we just set the filter. We set hueRotate to 0, which means no change, but by the time it reaches 100%, we want to change hueRotate to, for example, 720 degrees. So now we can see that the heart first starts with a red color, then changes to green, and finally becomes blue and red again. Now we can test it. As you can see, when we go to the right in the top, we get a scroll bar. We can remove the scroll bar by just using overflow hidden inside the body section. So we're not getting it anymore, and we can hide the scroll bar. We do it easily by just using overflow hidden. So let's see this inside our browser. As you can see, the spans are created inside the body section, and they are removed by using the setTimeout method. They are removed after 3 seconds. After that, we don't have any spans left. This concept can be used for creating very cool animations and also for things like a congratulations effect on your website whenever you want beautiful elements to come in from the top or bottom. So I hope you enjoyed this project and learned a lot. I'll see you in the next project.